Uncommon is a production by Neuralle, a full-service digital agency. If you want to grow with a premium agency and have the ability to work with Jordan directly, then learn more at neuralle.com/media and request a callback. That's neuralle.com/media.
My name's Jordan Michaelides and I'm the host of Uncommon, a show that asks the why on business, media, current affairs and sport. This Uncommon Corona editions sees us catching up with prior guests that have been on the show to document how they're actually adapting to this once-in-a-lifetime pandemic, I guess you could call it. If you like the episode, of course, please do subscribe on YouTube. Hit that like button. It helps us, of course, with the algorithm. Show notes for all guests, including previous ones, can be found at neuralle.com/uncommon. For audio, if you want to listen on podcasts, just search Uncommon on all your good podcast apps. And for social, to keep up to date behind the scenes, search at @uncommon_show. With that all being said, thanks for tuning in and let's get into the episode. My guest this week is Hayden Dib, filmmaker, photographer, director, and creator of The North Side. Habibi, welcome.
Habib, what's going on?
I was looking at icebreakers, and like so many in the last few weeks has been around Corona. But I've got to ask you, when are you going to get a tattoo of Uncommon or my face on your arm?
Okay, well, this all comes down to if you're paying for it or not.
So they did pay for it?
Well, no one paid for it. I got it for free.
Okay.
We basically got the tattoo studio to sponsor it. And like, it's so funny because I was speaking to Tommy the other day and I was like, I'm the only person who showers with the Daily Talk Show logo. Like no one else has that on me.
No one else can say that. Well, no. How many other tattoos have you got? 14
all up.
Okay.
Yeah. I've got some pretty weird. I've got some pretty stupid ones. I'm not going to lie.
What's the most stupid one and what's the most logical one that you have?
Oh, God. So you'll love this. The stupidest one is also kind of the most logical one. So being Lebanese, I never wanted to get like any Arabic writing or anything like that. So I got my favorite thing that's related to my heritage, and that's hummus.
Okay.
I have the word hummus written on my arm, like right there. And basically how that came about was when I was living in London, I was really good friends with a tattoo artist and like a couple of mates back home. They're like, oh, we miss you. One of them's a graphic designer. And he was like, I want to design you a tattoo. And it started off with like really like intricate stuff and all this other stuff. And I was like, bro, it's too much. I was like, just write something with a Sharpie and send it to me.
Yeah.
And he's like, what do you want me to write? I was like, I don't know, like hummus. And he did. He literally like wrote, I've still got the photo of the Sharpie, like all of the different Sharpie versions he did. And he basically just writ hummus, took a photo, sent it to me, and that same day I got it tattooed. So
I like it. I mean, we've all got these little things that we sort of pull back from our identity, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like I was just thinking, if I'd got a tattoo, what would I have gotten? But I remember there was like an age when I was like 15, 16 and you'd look to sort of identify. I remember I used to wear like Greek armbands.
Oh, dude, I knew so many kids because I grew up around, like all my friends are Greek, like every single one of them. Like my whole street, like it was either Aussies or Greeks. So I grew up with so many Greek kids. I like at one point, my dad like dropped me off at Greek school once.
Really?
Yeah, he was just like, he's like, oh, I got
just
nothing for you
like.
to do. And I was like hanging out with my mates and like they were all speaking Greek. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here.
Greek school was really well run. Like I went to Greek school for a month and I absolutely hated it. My parents didn't really care and I never really pursued it.
Yeah.
I also came from, I mean, the reason why I talk about this stuff is because like I was really confused as a kid because I had like an Aussie mum, a Greek dad, and I didn't look like any of my Greek friends. and like I had to like reinforce the fact that I was. This is why we like you give me shit about this stuff in Zoom. Maybe it's like it's there underlying in my head, like telling people that I'm Greek. I try not to do it too much.
Well, I think it's like as Australians, we almost have an identity crisis, like, and have had for ages, because you speak to anyone who's like third generation Greek, third generation Lebanese, like Italian, like we're not Australians. We're Lebanese, we're Greek, we're Italian, we're everything that our parents were when they were growing up. So it's like when people asked me what I was as a kid, I was half Lebanese, half Italian. That actually turned out to be very wrong. I'm not actually Italian.
Really?
So I did like 6-7 years of Italian, and then my mum speaks Italian to my grandma, but my grandma is not Italian because both my mum's parents are from Egypt, and they were in Cairo, which a lot of Italian and Greeks who came to Australia, that's where they grew up and they were born. But they speak like Greek, Italian, Maltese, and stuff like that. So I'm actually like Maltese, Egyptian, Lebanese. So it's like it's a weird mix. But yeah, like I was always identifying as Italian Lebanese. I'm never Australian.
So you must be a big Shane Delia fan. He's got a similar mix.
He's there's a bit of controversy. Like a lot of my family does not like him. I really do, because I've been to Maha, and Maha is insane. Like it's such a insane dining experience. And the food's fucking, you can't deny. Like also like Biggie Smalls kebabs. He's just doing some really cool stuff. But a lot of my family on my dad's side, the Lebanese side, are like, oh, he's bastardizing Lebanese food and stuff like that. And I was like, well, not really. He's just he's doing Mediterranean food. There's this like overarching theme, and he pulls that a lot because he's Maltese and his wife is Egyptian, I think. So he pulls it from that.
Yeah, his wife is Maha is her name. Either that or she is Lebanese.
She's Lebanese, or she's isn't she Moroccan?
Yeah, I think maybe you're right there. I should know because I interviewed him. I should go back and listen to the clip from the episode.
Fact check this.
Yeah. It's so funny. Like we've debated so many times on the daily talk show groups, Friday Night Drinks, around who created hummus. Do you find it fascinating that like so much of that, let's say like that crescent from Turkey all the way around to like Alexandria in Egypt is so similar?
It really is. And it's like, I think we joke a lot about like obviously who made the falafel and who made hummus. But I think it's like, it's so funny because like I think it's, in the times that we're living in right now, like I've seen something that food is very political. It's like it becomes this like, it becomes part of the identity that you identify with. So like this whole thing about hummus and falafel, and especially in those regions, we tend to like take it as ours, and it's like this nationalism that we like hold on to. Like I have so many Jewish friends who like we will constantly get into arguments about who owns the falafel or who owns hummus, and it's just like, right, I don't think we're ever going to agree on anything.
Yeah, but the one thing you can agree on is that it tastes good.
Oh, it tastes great, and both sides have their own ways of doing it, and both sides are just as good as each other.
I think that's why I always loved Bourdain. I saw like a poster of him recently that me and my mate want to get done up, but he was like the guy that was able to really go and look at food and just realize that most people just like to get along and to eat some nice food.
That was
which
it.
I quite liked.
He was a dude that really he kind of unraveled why he basically led all this conflict back to like, let's just sit over a meal and talk about it and really understand what food does for us. And that's become such a big part of my life, and how food has played such a massive role in pretty much everything that I do. And Bourdain is just like, rest in peace, Bourdain. But he was he was a god. He genuinely, he had the most interesting conversations with the most interesting people in the world, and ate some of the best food on the planet. And what's better than that?
Nothing's better than that. I do miss him a lot. I'd be intrigued to see what he has to say today. It's a weird time we live in, but I'm thinking, you as a kid, what sort of the lesson that, is there a lesson that stands out for you from either of your parents? Like something they may have said directly or indirectly that you still use to this day?
I think the way I was brought up was it's quite strange because obviously my dad growing up had come from Lebanon, I think when he was like 11 years old. And he was brought up in a very strict Muslim household. But obviously when he married my mum, my mum's obviously not Muslim. So there was no real reason to lean one way or the other. Like they tried to keep me as respectful as possible to the Muslim, to Islamic faith and all of that. But my parents have always been, we're going to give you the tools to be a really good person. And when you turn 18, that's up to you. You do what you feel is right. And I think that mentality and that kind of lesson has kind of, really served me well over the, growing up in my teenage years and stuff. Cause there was never any it was always an inclusive environment my family's made for me. My parents made for me and my brother and my sister. So we've always been brought up to just be like, respect everyone, no matter what they believe and who they are. It's just kind of like ingrained in us as from being kids. So,
do you get along well with your siblings?
Yeah. So I got a younger brother. He's 22. He's turning 22 this month.
Wow.
And then I got a younger sister who's 16. So there's a bit of an age gap between me and my brother and my sister. But yeah, I get along with them really well. So my brother, I don't live with my brother as much anymore. But yeah, we get along pretty well. He's kind of moving more into the scene that I'm in. He's like doing music and stuff. Right. So we kind of work on stuff together. He raps and writes music, and then I shoot his music videos and take his photos for him. So it's like more than ever, it's like a working relationship now.
I was intrigued, like, you speak about shooting music videos and whatnot, and that's where we can get into, like I said, brand Hayden Dib.
Yeah.
But, I was just looking back at, found your LinkedIn profile. Always good to...
no. I saw you go on.
You saw me look at it? It's always good to see what you can find someone on the internet. So I know you studied at Coburg High. You went to RMIT. Yeah. You did screen and media. Mm-hmm. There, I don't know what you did in between, but you obviously had some jobs. Obviously, LinkedIn, people don't put up every single fucking job they have. But
yeah,
the ones of note were Haystack, Kentucky in London, now completely freelance. I guess for you, what was sort of the earliest memory that you have getting into film or wanting to get into film?
It's funny. It's actually been brought up a couple of times in the past month. Is the way I think it all started from just like me watching Star Wars, and Star Wars was a big one for me.
Okay. And
I had like the Star Wars trilogy in the little black box with Darth Vader on the front. And there was always on the DVD, there's always the bonus, the extras, and the behind the scenes. And like I always found that so much more interesting than the actual films.
Really?
Seeing how they made, especially the one thing that sticks to me today and blew my mind was the sound of the lightsaber. And in A New Hope, the sound of a lightsaber it's the mix between a vacuum cleaner and a highway in Los Angeles. It's that is mind boggling that things that exist in our reality merge together can become something completely different in a new reality. It was that just absolutely baffled me. So my love for film started in the visual effects and the behind the scenes of just sci-fi films.
Did you find that as a kid you were always really intrigued by stories?
Yeah, I was always the kid who was always creating shit. I was a bit of a weird unit. I was always making stuff and always wanting to play make believe and shit like that. And all the friends that I grew up with on my street, you would just see us in our front yards, just almost acting out films and stuff. So there was always this element of wanting to tell a story. And it also came from me as a younger kid, I always wanted to hang around with older people because I found the shit that they were talking about so interesting.
Yeah.
It's I was whatever you're talking about, that's so much more interesting than what the 11-year-old I'm hanging out with is talking about. Yeah. You got more experience.
Yeah.
I want to be involved in that conversation. So
yeah, it was very similar for myself. I always used to sit at my favorite thing still to this day is sitting at a family table with like 12 people and seeing the different conversations. And the best moment is when everyone goes hush and one person is talking.
Yeah.
I feel like in that Mediterranean part of the world, that is a big thing. And for me, it was like seeing my grandpa tell stories. I remember he used to tell me a lot of like mythology stories.
Yeah.
And I used to be blown away by it. Like, it's all utter bullshit. But the point is that like it was fascinating as hell when you're a kid.
I think it is, because like those are stories that have been like either passed down or things that you've just like, you know, someone who's lived like, you know, 70, 80 years, like they've seen some shit. So it's like, you know, whether it's like not worth listening to or not, you still get so much out of it, regardless of the content. It's just like, whatever you're saying, there's something behind it. There's years behind whatever you're saying.
So when you've studied and obviously you were saying before that Star Wars was the thing that really pushed you. How, like, because I know that when I went to uni, at least the first year, I had no fucking idea what I was doing. And I still did my 3-year degree. I worked in finance for only been 8 or 9 years, and I'm now still segueing into sort of between finance and media. And I know that sort of is the direction that I want to go, but you seem to have found it quite early. So I guess what was sort of the catalyst that pushed you? Like, did you know at the end of year 12, this is what I'm going to do?
Well, I knew before the end of year 12, and that actually like kind of fucked me up for a little bit, because I basically had my mind set on studying film in New York. Like I was like, I'm sure if you talk to my mum, she was like, Hayden was like dead set on like moving to New York. I was like constantly on calls with a friend of mine who was living in LA at the time, and he just moved over to study film. And I was like, how much money do I need? Like, I was like working it all out. And I was 16 at the time, and I'm like working out how I'm going to move to fucking New York. And I was like, and that like got my head such in a zone that I actually I dropped out of year 12. So I didn't finish high school. Because I'd moved high schools as well. I went to Brunswick Secondary, and then I went to Coburg. And yeah, there's a whole thing about how the learning there kind of impacted the way that I kind of viewed education as a whole. But yeah, it kind of fucked me up. So I didn't end up finishing high school. I dropped out like 3 months before exams. And I kind of just like sat around while all my mates were stressing and like trying to finish their exams. And then I only got into uni because I was like, everyone around me was kind of like, you got to do something. Like you just need a bit of a boost, like a kickstart. And I ended up going, at the time I was still making stuff. I was like shooting little documentaries and like just shooting whatever I could.
Can you remember something that you shot back then?
Yeah, so one of the first things I shot, I'll send it to you, but you're not allowed to send it to anyone else.
Sure, that's nice.
It was a video. I'm sure people have seen it. Like it's you can find it if you really want to online. But it's like, you know, like I used to be really into visual effects, and I did this thing with my brother when I like tried to shoot an apple off his head with like a prop gun, and I ended up like killing my brother. And it's so bad and so fucking cringe. But like I look back, like a lot of people look back on those things that they did in their early days, and they're like, oh, that sucked. I was like, it didn't for me. That shit doesn't suck for me, because it's like I was truly fucking passionate, and I'm not jaded by the world as I am now, and like all the clients I deal with and all the work that I do. Like I was truly inspired to do stuff, and I just did it. Like I didn't, there was no like, I wasn't worried what other people thought, and I was just like, I want to make this, and I fucking go and make it. So
yeah, it's good that you had that. All I knew at that age, I remember actually, I've still got it to this day. This like not a diary entry, but I just wrote on like a piece of paper how frustrated as fuck I was that you couldn't do like a degree in like generalized things. Like I wanted to,
that's
like
an arts degree.
Yeah, but it's sort of not as well, because like I couldn't, you know, I wanted to learn how to write. I wanted to learn trading and finance, accounting. I wanted to learn computer. Like I just wanted to learn everything, and I just you couldn't actually do that with an arts degree, because you had to choose some sort of major in some sort of arts area, like geography or fucking feminist studies, which I'm just not. It's not me at all. I need to do something that is more. I even remember thinking like my degree that I did in commerce was just way too specific, and they don't allow for enough expansion into other areas.
Yeah.
So it's good that you had that as a kid, because it's really funny reading that diary of like 17-year-old Jordan or 17 or 18-year-old Jordan.
Yeah.
It's interesting though. You spoke about the thing with your brother with the VFX and the gun and all that, and you mentioned before about the lightsaber. Like, how come you never like? Why get into the area of sort of like I guess you call it cinematography based video as opposed to something like VFX?
Well, I think the more I started to dive into VFX, the more that I realized that I almost don't have the patience for it. It requires like such like long hours and
it's a lot of work.
And it's a lot, and it becomes very technical. Like it's a very technical art form. Like knowing how to use After Effects and Cinema 4D, like all of these things. I think I think I hit a wall with that, and I no longer felt that like it was creative enough for me. Like it just, there wasn't enough creativity in the process of doing visual effects that really interested me. So that's when I kind of turned my attention to more the cinematography side and stepping behind the camera, and the idea of like controlling an image was something that really interested me, and like making stuff look really cool. So I don't know. It was just more like the technical side of things, and I'm not a very technical person when it comes to that. And I also just got to the point where I was like, oh, there's so many other people who are like really fucking good at this stuff. And I'm like, from a very early age, I was like, oh, if I'm not that good, but I know someone else who's really good, I'm better off letting them do it than me fucking stress and try 100 different things, get to the same result in, half the amount of time. So,
do you remember a particular movie or something that sort of made you realize that the cinematography was where it's at? Because I'm sort of thinking, I remember I was in Paris in like 2012. I just finished uni. I was still really unsure about what to do. And we saw The Dark Knight. I remember thinking and seeing that, and the way that it was shot and the way that the story was told, I was just like, I couldn't get over it. Like I was in Paris, but I just did not give a fuck that I was in Paris. I was just blown away by this story.
That film, like The Dark Knight Rises, like that series is just stunning. Like it's fucking gorgeous. I think the first film that really got me like into cinematography, it's a weird one because it's not one that most people would expect. It was The Secret Life of Walter Mitty with Ben Stiller.
Oh yeah, that's a fucking underrated film.
Dude, so good, and it's just visually stunning. And like, obviously, it's hard to make Iceland look shit. Like it's like Iceland's a beautiful country, but like I remember that was my year 12 film that I was like studying, and I just remember looking at it, watching it, and having to like write shit about it. And I was like, I almost can't explain why I love this so much, but this is what I want to do. Like I want to make shit look this good. And yeah, it was just, that was probably the first film that really got me visually. And also like something like Blade Runner as well. And just these films that like just took it to the next level was just fucking amazed me.
That scene on The Secret Life of Walter Mitty when he's like longboarding down the hill, and they played, I can't remember what the song was, but there's a song that they play that sort of defined that sort of those next 3 years in terms of song music or like video clip music and stuff like that.
Well, it was like almost like a music video placed in the middle of the film. It was
actually
crazy.
It actually was. I'm gonna have to look that up. Iceland scene. Yeah, it's a great fucking movie. Yeah, I remember having like a few along the way. Like 500 Days of Summer to me was fascinating. I feel like that came out when I was like 18 or 19.
I still haven't seen it. It's
really?
sitting in my watch list. A few other people have been like, you need to watch it. And I was like, yes, I know. I'm really bad with that. Like I have so many films I haven't seen. Like my brother hounds me on a weekly basis to watch Scarface. I've never seen it.
Yeah, it's an okay film.
See, that's the thing. I'm like, I get like these mixed things. I'm like, do you know what? Like I need to get told it's shit so much that I'm like, you know what? I need to go actually watch it.
That sort of thing. I feel like IMDb Top 100 is really good for that. I remember there was a Friday night drinks with the Daily Talk Show, and Tommy and I were literally running through the top 50. And I'm pretty sure Secret Life of Walter Mitty is like in there in the top 100.
I mean, like, it should be. It's such a beautiful and like such a cool story. It was just, I just loved it.
So, brand Hayden Dib.
Yes.
You've obviously got multiple ways of making money in the space as a freelancer now. You're doing many different things. I think the clear thing for me is probably, well, it's very hard because of coronavirus, but to me, before coronavirus, it was food and travel. So and they've immediately been impacted, and probably music as well, right?
Yeah.
Food, travel, music. But now, obviously, music's slowly coming back. I saw you were doing some doing a shoot with Baked recently.
Yeah.
In your mind, what is the brand of Hayden Dib?
It's food, man. Food.
Yeah.
Like, food is like, and it's so funny because like I don't want to talk about Corona too much because it's like it's been overplayed. But like literally before all of this kind of shit hit the fan, I was going into pre-production for a food show. Like, we were making a full TV series with a good friend of mine, and I was going to be hosting and directing it. And it was going to be looking like an in-depth look into the Melbourne hospitality industry and more of a holistic view on everything and how sustainability is becoming such a bigger part of the hospitality industry and how things are changing. And like kind of just shit hit the fan, and like it did something to the hospitality industry I think no one really expected. They were hit so hard, and I have so many friends in the industry. So it was and I'm still so close with all of them, and I'm always keeping tabs with them. I'm always at their places, and we're always having those discussions about like what it's like to actually be reliant on the hospitality industry as a family, as an individual. So it's such an interesting space to be in. And it was like slowly becoming like more and more of what I wanted to kind of look into. Because before I ever wanted to be a filmmaker or a director, I wanted to be a chef. Like that was something that, and I still today, like I tell people all the time that if you like don't see me for 5 years and you come back and I'm like working in a kitchen, don't be surprised, because like there was a moment when I remember it was like a month before I came back from London. I was on the phone with my mum, and like work had just kind of knackered me out. Like I did not want to do video anymore. Like I was like, I'm fucking done. Like it just, the job had like tired me out and physically and mentally just drained me. And I was like, I need to do something different. I'm not saying I don't want to ever do video again, but I just need to take a break from it to really know that that's what I want to do for the rest of my life. And it was in that moment that I realized I can do both.
Yeah.
I mean, at the detriment to like, physical and mental health, I can do both. And literally it's what I did when I got back. I pushed all of my focus to shooting food photography, and making pretty much everything I did revolve around the other thing that I love. So I ended up working in a friend's kitchen before COVID, and like cooking in a tiny little kitchen. It was just me in the kitchen, and it kind of threw me into the deep end. It was so much fun, and but it made me realize that like if I wanted to do both, I could. I just needed to pick the parts of each industry that interested me and also try and meld them together. So yeah.
What do you think are your favorite media brands in this space? Like I can rattle off a few that immediately come to mind that sort of amalgamate what you're doing, but I'm sure there'd be some that you really like.
What would you name? I'd love
Attaché is sort of lesser known, probably because they're more in the travel space, but they intertwine it always with food. So the majority of the travel is about food, but they'll land in a place and say, okay, this is where you go for the metro. This is if you want taxi, Uber, blah, 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 blah. And the guy is an American guy who lives in London, and they film everywhere in the world. And the way it's shot is just really, really nice, and it's gotten better over time. He reminds me a lot of Bourdain.
There's some guys, I think they're called Top Jaw on YouTube. There's two British dudes who do like a really fun travel show, and they go eat stuff, and and stuff. I don't watch them too often, but when I do, their stuff is pretty cool, and I just like it sticks out to me.
Yeah.
But no, go for it.
Well, the ones I was actually just going to look at my my YouTube subscription list, but the obvious ones are I like Bon Appetit.
Bon Appetit.
Epicurious is good. I really like Bon Appetit when not when they get the celebrities in there, but when they get the lady who's got like a grey dye streak.
Claire.
Yeah, Claire. And she always redoes like a sweet or something.
Gourmet Mates. Yeah.
Gourmet Mates, that's it.
Yeah.
And then
that's my show, man. That's my vibe.
I like Bibbing with Babish is good.
Love Bibbing with Babish. Who else is there's Pro Home Cooks, Mike.
Yeah.
Mike G, he's really great. Sorted Food is like pretty much my entire like subscription box on YouTube is just food. It's literally just food stuff. There's Matty Matheson.
Yep.
He's got this new show out called Just a Dash and Eating Out America. And
what's Vice's food brand?
Munchies.
Munchies, that's it.
Yeah.
I did used to like Munchies quite a lot.
Munchies is good because they've obviously got Action Bronson and they do a lot of stuff with Matty Matheson but yeah, I think Bon Appetit's been a really key one for me over the past like probably year because of guys like Brad Leone and Claire and they've just got such good personalities that it really comes through and that comes through in the food that they're sharing. So
do you think like for you personally, do you prefer something like Bon Appetit where it's sort of like a big media brand, or do you prefer the idea of being a creator and independent?
I like both. It all just depends because there's a couple like one thing I think Melbourne lacks is a food media company that really stands for the hospitality industry and food. Because like I hate broadsheet.
Everyone hates broadsheet. If you're in the industry, fuck broadsheet.
Broadsheet can go fuck themselves. And
it's a commercial rag that I'll wipe my ass with.
Exactly. And it's so funny because everyone who's not even slightly connected to the hospitality industry thinks that broadsheet's this like saving grace. And it's like you speak to any chef and they're like, fuck broadsheet. They're like, I don't want them anywhere near anything that I do. So like, I just think there's one thing that Australia's missing, and that's something that like me and my friend had spoken so much about when we were talking about doing our food show, is like we want to build a network for Australia for food because there's so many good individual creators in Australia who do such good stuff with food stylists, chefs like Shane D'Elia. And there's just like every time any Australian chef like goes on anything media related, it's always like a morning show. And it's like, and it's just like no one fucking watches that shit. Like who the fuck watches morning shows anymore?
Well, I can only think of one person, and it's Sophia Levin. But even then,
why is that name ring a bell?
She's a Jewish girl, and Sophia Levin. Wonder how there's a connection there. She does food, travel, and she's mainly a writer. So she writes in Good Food, Lonely Planet, etc. I don't think anyone has really gone from being in the written word to something based in video. I think that's the real. I think that really is the gap right now, and I'd 100% agree. I can't think of a brand that has been able to fill that, and I know that there is an opportunity there because people always talk about food, particularly in Melbourne and Adelaide, cities that are based on locals.
Well, I think the reason Melbourne struggled to do that is because we're such a wanky city.
Yeah.
Like whether we like it or not, like the hospitality industry in Melbourne has become such a wank that we've almost like, we're beyond having that kind of video stuff. Like broadsheet, every time they do something video wise, it's super arty and wanky and like no one really gives a fuck what they're talking about. Same with like Urban List and Time Out. Like Time Out's probably one of the better ones because they really don't discriminate against like a small fish and chip shop, which we were talking about this the other day, like charcoal chicken places. Yeah. Like they're disappearing because of fucking gentrification and all that kind of stuff.
This is another thing as well that you've hit on is what these brands do is they make everything commercial.
Yeah.
You know? So people like you and Tommy did a video on like your local kebab joints, and I think it was you, Tommy, and Ryan selected a kebab joint and you went to it. Now, people can poo-poo that, but don't we all every now and then just love a good kebab? Like, what's so wrong with every now and then just having a kebab? You don't have to have the finest, most luxurious thing for a meal. And that is the thing that's I think Instagram's really done that.
Well, Instagram has been it's been very detrimental to the hospitality industry, but also it's a hard one because a lot of cafes, for instance, they rely so heavily on Instagram for business. Yeah? And there's like so many like Instagram agencies taking advantage of that spot in the market where there was an agency, I won't name names, but like there's an agency that I worked with who were charging cafes ridiculous amounts of money to like run their socials. And it's like, if you know anything about the hospitality industry, you know that people can't afford that more than ever now. And it's funny because people can't, foot traffic isn't a thing anymore. Like foot traffic just doesn't exist at the moment. So what's the best way to reach people? And that's social media. So you've found that like COVID's been such an interesting time for the hospitality industry in terms of what we're talking about now is this whole like Instagram and like, blogs and stuff like that, because this is the only way that they can really reach people. And a lot of cafes have realized, and a lot of cafes and establishments and restaurants have realized that the only way that they're ever going to like keep running in this time is for them to take that responsibility on themselves, which has brought out some amazing personalities in Melbourne's hospitality industry, because they're not relying on broadsheet. They're not relying on these fucking commercialized like blogs and stuff to like say yay or nay to a place. And that's why like, the kebab shop that me and Tommy went to, it's like, why aren't those smaller businesses who are fucking struggling during this time? Why aren't they being shined, a spotlight on? Because the cafe that sits 150 people and does wanky fucking French toast, they're going to be fine. Like at the end of the day, the person who owns that was probably doing really well. Whereas like there's one dude in a fucking kebab shop makes a sick kebab, but because of this whole like time that we're in, they're probably going to fall behind and they're going to be left behind. So there is such an interesting dynamic in Melbourne where we're very spoilt with the food that we have. And I think it's time that we start to realize that it's all good and there's not a hierarchy. Like we're so spoilt for good food that we've become spoilt and wanky in regards to the food that we eat and we consume, because it's like Instagrammable and stuff like that.
There's definitely an opportunity there. I'm excited to see what you come up with, because I feel like I've really gotten into Barstool Sports recently. I think that what they did in terms of sport, I think the main thing is often with these brands, and Vice used to do this really well, but they're sort of softened on this, is just intertwining. Maybe it's like a little shake of comedy, a little shake of or a lack of political correctness, and that could be as simple as just swearing. Just swearing.
Yeah.
Like, which is not people think that's not a commercially viable thing, but like the other day I watched a Barstool Sports series where they call it the draft. Or no, it was called the practice day or some shit. And it was literally just a day where they did like ridiculous races and events amongst all the Barstool Sports staff. And it was like sponsored by Kettle One. They're swearing, they're doing fucking sack races, egg races, like throw a football, all this dumb shit. And it's just so funny and fun. You know what I mean?
It's funny that like these old...
and brands want that, by the way.
Yeah, they do, because like it's an old standard that we abide by, this whole like no swearing, political correctness. It's like, it's an old standard. It's like, that's why places like Vice did so well in the early days, because they were pushing that button. Like they've almost gone too far into it that they're now like so politically correct that they like their audience, they can't piss them off anymore. Yeah. So it's like
that's a real problem, because I think what happened with a lot of those brands is that, and the ones that have done really well, like Complex, Barstool, the ones that have weathered that, basically is because on a finance side, they didn't go raise lots of venture capital. And the problem with when you raise a lot of venture capital and you don't sort of start off as a grassroots sort of business that then gets financing, so you test your product and you prove it that you can be profitable, then you end up being in the situation where you've got people who are just funneling you massive amounts of money and you just have to grow. Same thing happened to BuzzFeed. It's why BuzzFeed just left Australia, is because they've been massively venture funded, and I don't think it works in media. I think in media, the money impacts your editorial voice. I think you need to get local angel investors or other investors to get behind it as you can prove it out.
I think you find that with a lot like the smaller businesses as well, is like, you know, and this goes for like people who are in like my line of work, and it's like this whole, you know, the whole thing about selling out in a way is like, you know, a lot of people, the younger guys that I work with are always like, you know, I want to do this or I want to do that. I'm like, well, you have to start doing that now. Don't wait for anyone to give you, like, no one's going to give you anything. And when they do, they're going to expect you to do it their way. And the only way for you to stop that is to do it your way right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how like someone like Complex is like think about Hot Ones as a show. Like,
amazing.
But like that 10 years ago, if you had approached someone and gone, we've got this show where we're going to give like the hottest pepper in the world to the biggest celebrities on the planet, they'd be like, fuck no, it's a PR nightmare. We're not going to give you money for that. So what like Sean Evans and they did was basically go, okay, well, let's just start off with like grassroots, like hip hop, and like interview guys that like, and build our way up. And like, that's exactly what you were talking about before, is just like slow incline to be like, to the point where people are just giving you money to do what you want to do. It's not like, here's money and we've got control over this. It's very interesting. Like,
Dan Monheit, who runs probably the biggest independent agency here in Australia, once said to me on a podcast, and has said it regularly off air, that everything in media is a remix. He said the best ideas in media are ones where you take X and Y, smash it together and see what comes out of it. And he actually... Hot Ones was, I think he did this talk at South by Southwest, and I think Hot Ones was one of the examples he used. I may be wrong, but he can give me numerous examples around that, and I think that is the case. And you've just got to pepper two different things that sort of just go together, and it comes up with something new. Otherwise, you're just copying people, and it gets quite boring.
Well, it's funny because if you look at the Hot Ones, it's like it's two very niche subcultures. There's like the chili heads and like the OG hip hop like scene.
Sneakerheads as well.
Yeah, sneakerheads. And it was like, it's like if you'd pitched that to anyone without just going ahead and doing it, people would have been like, what? Wait, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? You want to eat chicken wings with like sneakerheads and rappers? It was just, it's like, those are the ideas that really like take off. So yeah.
So in between this idea of building this food brand, you're obviously doing a lot of work as a creator. I mentioned before at the start in your bio, filmmaker, photographer, director. So you're doing a lot of work with Baked at the moment as things slowly open up. I think before that, as I said, I would notice how many restaurants you do work with. Subtle, I think you've done some work with.
Yeah.
Tell me, what's sort of your creative process in your mind when it comes to a project? How do you think about it?
Because I'm doing such a variety of things all the time. Like my stuff varies from like doing like food shoots and doing like shooting a full menu. Yeah. And something like that is really interesting because I have to shift my mindset over to more of like be more of a foodie and think less about the technical side of things. So like, for instance, I think next week I'm shooting an Italian restaurant. And I don't want to just shoot that Italian restaurant like every Italian restaurant's ever been shot, with like a glass of red wine in the background and red tablecloths. And like, you know, there's like, how do I approach it differently to how the rest of the industry is approaching that cuisine? Yeah. So like, you know, for me, it starts with me like thinking about light and how I'm gonna like shoot specific types of food. So my first thing is like, can you send me a menu? And I start to look through the menu and be like, okay, it'd be really cool to shoot this like this and that like that. Like for instance, the Italian restaurant I'm shooting, they do like I don't know what it's called, but they're like little meat skewers, like chicken and lamb, and like basically they salt the fuck out of it and they put it over like a charcoal, this like custom made charcoal grill, and they taste so good. So I'm like, well, I love the idea of like them salting the fuck out of it. So how do I show that in a photo? And the best way to do that is like shoot up against the black wall and shine light through with someone holding two sticks up. And then, so I base the shoot around ideas that I have and certain scenes that like I want to capture.
Yeah.
And that applies to kind of everything else as well. It's when I'm like directing a video for Baked, I need to hear the song first, and I sit and listen to the song like 6 or 7 times, and I'm just trying to trying to embody and like a vibe to it, and then try and connect that to a visual.
So basically, what I sense is you're trying to structurally get some sort of clothesline to hang everything upon, and you're looking for a key element. And there's obviously things in certain industries or types of shoots that stand out more than most, i.e., a menu. Or a type of dish, or the actual song itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really about like taking the contents of whatever you're shooting and really making that the focus. Because if I go into a restaurant and I shoot the food and all I do is like put it all on the table and take a flat lay shot, it's like I'm not really telling a story. I'm not really like I'm not doing the food justice. And it's the same thing for music. Is if like I can't really understand the song and really gain an understanding of the lyrics and all of that, I can't do anything with that. So my thing is like reading. It's the same thing. Like the menu and the song are the same thing in a sense. You know, it's the meats of everything.
I'm thinking generally about actually, do you prefer film or do you prefer like photography? Do you have any, like, are you a 60-40 one way or the other?
I'm like 50-50 straight down the middle. I love both. I can't pick, like, because when I shoot food, like that, I think about it in the terms of like, when I shoot food, I genuinely feel happy. And then when I shoot film, I genuinely feel happy. So I don't want to place any more emphasis on either, because I enjoy doing both and I want to continue doing both for as long as I can. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And I guess it's interesting. You built a brand now today. How were you initially finding your clients?
That's a good question. I don't know. It's just, it was very natural. Like,
just gravitated.
Well, the first food thing I ever shot was a friend. So a friend of ours, a really close family friend of ours, opened up a cafe called Oh Hey. Like, I'm sure you would have seen some of the photos, and I was like always there at the kind of like start of last year. They were opening up a cafe. They had a really like clear aesthetic to the cafe. And my biggest thing was like, I was like, oh, I've wanted to shoot food for so long, and I kind of know what I'd do for these guys. So I just asked my dad's mate, and I was like, let me shoot the menu for free the first time. Like, if you don't like it, don't worry about it. But if you do like it, let me continue shooting for you. And he's like, yeah, come in and shoot the menu. And I shot it, and literally within a week, I had like 2 agencies hit me up, and like all of these clients just kind of like, we want you to shoot food. And I was like,
wow.
Okay. I was like, this is the first time I've ever done this. Like, it was insane that like, I think I just kind of had this thing in the back of my mind for so long that as soon as I was able to let it out, it was like I'd been doing it for so long. So it was really interesting. Like, I literally went from like shooting one cafe to shooting like 3 cafes a week, and like shooting for like Pullman hotels, and like,
Jesus.
And shooting entire menus. So it was a crazy year of my life. It just kind of like shifted me into this like world that I've always wanted to be in. And all of a sudden I was doing it.
That's a really good indicator for what potential appetite there is in this market around grassroots video and food. So that's very interesting how quick. I'm guessing most of these people would have hit you up over Instagram,
you put out a few shoots, stuff like that.
It was people just seeing my stuff. They'd be like, "Oh, we saw your stuff, but oh hey, we want the same." And I was like,
don't you love that?
Yeah, we want the exact same thing. I was like, yeah, but you're not oh hey. Like what's your cafe?
Yeah.
It's funny because that's how basically when I started shooting food, and one of my things was I had such respect for chefs and cooks. Like the kitchen was, when I walked into a cafe, like front of house, cool, owners, cool. The first people I ever spoke to on a shoot, when I went into a cafe to shoot, I spoke to the chef. It was like my first thing. I was like, what do you want this food to look like? Because whatever you put on the plate, that's what it's going to look like. I can't make it look like, if it looks like shit on the plate, I can't make it look any better. And sometimes it was a struggle, like going into cafes, because you could tell that the kitchen just didn't give a fuck what they were putting out.
Yeah.
And then I'd get complaints from the client. I'd be like, there's like nothing I can do. Like that's coming from your kid. Exactly. Like I gotta make it look cool with like lights, but if it looks like shit, I can't change that.
That's an age-old thing in the marketing business, is people think that something is poorly marketed, but in actual fact, a lot of the times it's just a poor thing is marketed.
Exactly. And it was one of the chefs that I work with, I did consulting work with him. We'd go into cafes and we'd kind of help them like rebrand and redo their menu. And one of the biggest things we always found was like all of these owners, all of these cafe owners and all these like restaurant owners thought there was like a one-stop shop fix for everything. It was like, oh, we'll get good photos and a new menu. I was like, yeah, but if your staff doesn't care about the menu and you don't care about the food that's being shot, there's nothing we can do. Like, people will see that even in the nicest photo. They can tell that you don't give a fuck. It's just shallow. So it really comes from like, if you're running a business, it needs to be from the top to the bottom that everyone is on the same page and they are passionate about making a coffee. They're passionate about fucking cleaning a table. Like that is what it takes to draw people in to a cafe or restaurant. So
what's in your kit bag?
My camera bag. I have an EOS R, Canon EOS R, which I shoot. I shoot 100% of my stills on now. I used to shoot on a 5D Mark III, and then I have a couple of lenses. I got like a 35mm, which I love, 50mm, 1.4. What else do I have?
Do you prefer like prime lenses over like something with quite a high range?
It really depends. Like I love shooting, like my 35 almost never leaves my camera. Like I love my 35mm. It's so fucking good. Like it's the Sigma Art 35 1.4. There's just nothing wrong with that lens. It like works for everything. But like on my C200, on my cinema camera, like for most stuff, I've got the 24 to 105 because I'm shooting a lot of news stuff and it requires me to like just be able to just run and go. But obviously when I do have the time to like, use different glass, like when I shoot a lot of interviews, I'll shoot on like my 70 to 200. That's really fun because it's just such a nice lens. But last night we were on a music video. We used my C200, but we had like Zeiss CP2 cinema glass, and filters and stuff like that. So I like, if I'm shooting stills, it's predominantly on my 35mm. And that's pretty much in my bag constantly. I also have like a little Fuji point and shoot.
Okay.
That's like a lot of my, that's for fun.
Like a film camera?
I'll get it. Give me 1 sec. I'll be back in one moment. I'm back. So there's like two cameras. So there's like, I've always technically got like 3 cameras on me at all time. So I got my EOS R, which is this bad boy.
Yep.
And I
was speaking to Josh about this because we're getting a Sony A7.
Don't do it. Buy this. Buy the EOS R.
Okay, why?
I just think, first of all, the color science on a Canon is so much better.
Yeah, because I think everyone would agree the color on the Canon lenses are better.
But even like the sensor, like it was so funny because this camera is like the most hated camera on the internet. Like everyone was like, oh, it sucks because it doesn't shoot. It crops in on a 4K image. And I was like, yeah, but like, who gives a fuck? Like it actually worked. Like I went through so I had an A7S Mark II.
Okay.
And then I had a GH5.
Yeah.
And then I had a Fuji X-T3.
Jesus.
And then I sold that and I bought this, and this has fit into my workflow like immediately. Like, I don't know why I had such reservations against this camera, because when I bought it, especially being a B camera to my C200, which is also Canon, it's become this whole thing where it's like, it's not about what the best camera is. It's what the best camera is for you as a creator. Mm-hmm. And even though this is an epic stills camera, it's mirrorless. It does punch in on a 4K image, but the 4K image is beautiful. It shoots 1080 full frame, which is epic because like most shit that goes on YouTube and Instagram, it's like 4K is just, it's fucking overkill. Like it always has been and always will be.
You need the internet speed to even deal with it. Exactly.
So the 4K on this is great. I usually shoot 1080 if I'm shooting video on the EOS R. But yeah, man, this is like my favorite fucking camera. And it just like the second I bought it, I was like, oh, I've made the right choice. I don't know why I wasted my time with all of these other, all these other cameras.
The C200, this is another debate Josh and I have had around camera rigs, because we don't have a proper stills camera. So that's one thing. We build a smaller rig with like an EOS R or a Sony A7. Because the C200 is starting to change quite a bit. They've obviously, what did they release recently? It was a
C500 Mark II and the C300 Mark III.
That's it. What are your thoughts around the Canon at the moment? Do you think that if you were to upgrade, that you would look at a different series of the C series, or would you upgrade if they brought out a new C200, or would you look at a Red? What's sort of your thought process around that?
Yeah, for me, it's become more of a, like, if I'm going to upgrade a camera, I probably will stick with Canon. Because
the glass?
The glass as well. The glass, Canon's EF mounts are so widely available. And like, even though this is an RF mount lens, like that uses the new RF like sensor, the adapter that Canon sells is more than good. Like
you can just use an adapter.
You could just use it. Like it doesn't get in the way at all. Whereas like, and same with like the C200 obviously has an EF mount, which is not the greatest thing, but there are a couple of cinema lenses that I can use on that. You can swap out the mount. It's a bit of a head fuck though. But if we're talking about like upgrading, I basically had this conversation with someone yesterday that if I'm going to upgrade, it'll probably be like mid next year, and I would probably go to the C500 Mark II because it's a full frame sensor. It shoots 5.9K. It does RAW. It basically does everything I need on either side of my work spectrum. It does the high end like cinematic production stuff, and it also can shoot like the stuff that my C200 shoot. That's the best part about the C200. It's like, again, it was that camera that came out and everyone's like, the specs fucking suck and you can't shoot 422 4K. And I'm just like, what is everyone fucking complaining about? Like for me, if I show you the stuff that I shot on like today and I show you the stuff I shoot tomorrow, you're like, oh, that's the same camera. And you're like, it's you just need to find the camera that works for you. And some people get caught up in the specs and end up getting a camera that has the best specs, but it's not necessarily the right camera for them.
Yeah, it's massive overkill in a lot of cases. Like it's funny because, you know, if you think about the groups of cameras, you've got sort of those mirrorless cinematic cameras that can be built into rigs. You've got probably this Canon C200 to 500 series are sort of in the middle, and then you've got like your Reds and your Aries, which is sort of comparable. And I would agree with that. I think that Canon is probably the only one that can tip either way.
Yeah, that's the thing.
The C series.
But there's been a kind of a stigma attached to Canon that they can't really do the cinematic side of stuff because of Red and because of Ari. Like, don't get me wrong, I love shooting on Red and I love shooting on Ari, but I'd never own one.
You still got to spend $50,000 to buy a rig. So it only really makes sense if if you're working in the cinema industry and you're getting paid a ridiculous amount of money for a shoot. Otherwise, it doesn't make much sense.
Like if you want to just rent one for the day. Like
they're cheap to rent.
They're not that expensive. So yeah. And then I personally would stick with Canon because I love their color science and they just work. That's the biggest thing. They're reliable. They're a reliable system. But like at one point I did think about moving completely over to Fuji because I have the Fuji X100F, which is like a little film emulation camera that like it's just not a little point and shoot. Like this is completely digital, but I basically shoot this like I would shoot film. Like I shoot JPEGs, I bake the look into the actual image, and then I just transfer over to my phone. Like the SD card never comes out of this camera. So so there's like, it took me a very long time to find the cameras that worked for me. And I finally gotten to a point in my like camera journey that I'm like, I'm content for the next like couple of years. Like I don't need anything more. Like if anything, I'm just going to like upgrade the cameras that I have. I don't get excited by new specs anymore because I understand my work and I understand what I need to get that work done. So it's like, I was always calling this like, I want to get a red. I was like, no, I don't. I don't want to spend $50K on a camera that I can only shoot like jobs that are actually paying me to use that camera. Yeah. Whereas a C200, I can use it on anything I want because I've paid it off already. It wasn't that much money. So it's definitely like, it's an interesting conversation. And
it sounds like you're in quite a mature place. You've got your type of work that you really enjoy working on. You got your type of equipment that you really like working on. So now it's just a matter of really growing that and doing more of what you like.
Exactly. And it's just iterations of the work that I do and the gear that I use. And and I try to instill that in like a lot of younger guys who I work with. It's like, they're always like, oh, what camera should I get next? I'm like, what camera do you have now? What camera do you have now?
I've interviewed a lot of young photographers, what is it? Le Mans, North Borders, South Era, those younger guys who are probably 21, 22, Hayden Pedersen. And that has to be the default procrastination question. It is. Like, who cares? You'll buy one, you realize either you've wasted money or you haven't, and then you've learnt, a valuable lesson that this is not the thing for you, and then you find the next one. Like, just get into it.
Well, the biggest thing, people who are like getting into photography, like really early stages, like, what camera do I buy? I was like, what phone do you have? And everyone's like, oh, I've got an iPhone 8 or iPhone 11 Pro Max. And I was like, use that.
Just go.
I was like, I'll show people shit that, because I just moved to, like, I've just got an iPhone now. But I had the Pixel XL before this, 3XL. And I would take photos on that phone and people thought it was shot on my Canon. I was like, yeah, because it's not about the camera. It's about how you use the tools that you've got. Yeah. So I'm like, for most people, like, especially for food photography, like, I'll send you these two photos and I'll try and get you to pick which one's my Canon and which one's my phone. It's hard to tell because it doesn't matter, because everything that went into making the photo what it was, it wasn't about what camera I was using. It was the lighting. It was the styling. It was how I shot the photo. So it's so often that they're like, oh, I want to buy a camera and I've only got $600. I was like, but you have $1,000 phone. I can use that.
Yeah. And there's another good example from me personally. I said for years that I really wanted to get into bonsai, and it took eventually my mum finally bought. Yeah, my mum bought me one, and I was like, fuck, like, because I used to make up excuses like, oh, the balcony doesn't get enough sunlight, I don't have the right equipment, blah 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 blah. And then when my mum bought one, it was sort of like a forcing function. I had to get the shit and to do the things to keep it alive and not kill it. And you just go from there, and then you just buy more stuff and you find out more things that you really, really like. Yeah,
exactly. It's all excuses. We just make excuses for why we can't do things.
Exactly. Yeah. Look, I could ask you a lot more things, but I know you've got something on it, one, and I wanted to ask you some rapid fire questions. So
go for it.
To finish things off, what does your morning and evening routine look like?
Well, so I wake up at about 8:30. At the moment, like I'm getting into a routine of waking up a little bit early. make myself a coffee, have some brekkie, get through some emails, and then depending on the day, I'll kind of just like either do fuck all or I'll just be like straight into work mode and either be just emailing, you know, trying to get shoots sorted and stuff like that. End of the day, I like to just like chill out. I love to cook, so I'm always like cooking something up in the kitchen. It could be literally anything. So whatever I've got in the fridge. And then I'm a night owl. So I don't usually go to bed till about midnight, 1 a.m. So
same. I don't think I ever really sleep until at least 12.
Yeah. Well, I've been trying different things to help me get to bed a little bit earlier. Like I've been wearing like blue light glasses for when I'm using my computer. I'm trying to do that as often as I can. I also, controversial, I take CBD oil. I don't know if you want to involve that, put this in the podcast.
I'd love some CBD oil.
Man, it's like, I don't know why it's fucking illegal, but like it helps me fall asleep. Like it does wonders for me because it's not a psychoactive in any sense. But it really helps me like slow down. And like when I take it about an hour before I go to bed, just like a couple of drops. And then I'm kind of like, I don't want to look at my phone. I actually want to sleep. And my sleep is uninterrupted. It's so fucking good. And I've never felt fucking better after taking some of that. And
that stuff is fascinating what it does to your system and relaxing. I've learned a lot about that recently, and also like vitamin D. I didn't realize that vitamin D was actually a hormone. It actually really, really helps with your sleep patterns.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you look into stuff like that.
Yeah. So, look into it.
Lean into it.
All right. What have you been watching? Movie, podcast, doco, anything during this whole lockdown period?
All right, I'll be quick with this. I finished watching Normal People. Normal People was absolutely brilliant. I somehow ended up finishing and watching Colony, the like sci-fi TV show on Netflix. Curb Your Enthusiasm. I'm all over that. It's one of the best shows. I just started watching Avenue 5, which is the HBO series of it's like a space cruise.
Oh, I know that.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like I just started watching it, and I was like, why did it take me so long to watch this? So that's what. And then podcast. I'm always listening to the Joe Rogan podcast.
Yeah.
I'm always checking in on the Daily Talk Show. Like I don't watch I'm one of those people like I don't watch every single episode because it's just too much.
It's too much. I'm a snippets guy.
Yeah, I watch the snippets. I watch Georgie Boy's Hump Day Replay. And then what are like other podcasts? Not many other podcasts at the moment. I feel like I'm just way too busy, and I used to listen to a lot more podcasts when I had like commute into work and back. I find that when I've got my own time, I spend it doing other things. But yeah, the Joe Rogan podcast, Tiger Belly, and the Daily Talk Show.
Oh, Tiger Belly with what's that guy's name?
Bobby Lee.
Bobby Lee. He's so fucking funny.
He's got the other podcast, Bad Friends, with Andrew Santino.
Yeah, and that's a newer one.
That's brilliant. That is like so fucking good. So yeah, and then I watch a bunch of YouTube. So,
last question for you.
Yep.
During this whole period, what has been the best purchase? And you could have done it beforehand or during it, but the best purchase under $200 that sort of entertained you or helped you at the moment?
Oh, best purchase.
I've
been buying a lot of shit, Jordan. My Amazon card has been pretty full. I think I bought like an audio interface for my laptop.
Oh yeah.
No, that
well, like a device for plugging in an audio.
Like a microphone. Well, the thing is because I play a lot of music, so I play guitar like pretty much every day, and I have a guitar amp, but I hate fucking plugging it in, and so I bought an audio interface that allows me to like plug a microphone and plug my guitar in and record into like GarageBand and stuff like that, and I can like change effects and amps and record stuff and like record ideas that I have and stuff like that. So that's probably been the most fun because it just allows me to like have that extra level of like creativity. Also, actually, no, that's not it. I bought an iPad Pro. I bought the iPad Pro 12.9 inch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Give me your quick read on that because I need to get rid of this MacBook Air, get a better desktop unit and then something smaller. So I'm wondering, do I build a streaming PC buy a Mac and then go with an iPad Pro?
iPad Pro. Well,
Um,
it's been the absolute greatest thing for me because I'm on my laptop right now and I'm in my dining room, but usually my laptop does not leave its side. It like sits next to like a 32-inch monitor. It's pretty much docked the whole time. So it's basically like my desktop.
and what's your laptop?
This is a 15-inch MacBook Pro from like 2017. So late 2017 MacBook Pro 15-inch, fully spec'd out. So it does the job for me, like for most stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So this just stays at home, stays docked. And then when I'm going out for meetings and I'm doing production meetings with Baked, or I'm just like even editing photos on the go, the iPad Pro has been like the best thing productivity wise, because it just allows me to like get a little bit more hands on with the work when I'm not at home. And I also just hate lugging around a 15-inch MacBook. It's like such a pain in the ass. So I would, if I was you, I'd go desktop and get something like the iPad Pro with like a keyboard, and then you can get emails done. You can edit photos. You can like, I was watching 4K footage on my iPad yesterday. And like editing it as well. Like it's a fucking machine, man.
Yeah, I really need to get that sorted because I've had issues with these MacBook Airs are dog shit. Absolute dog shit. All right. Well, look, Hayden, where can people find you on social?
Instagram. Instagram's the main place that I post everything and I share my work.
Yeah.
So just Hayden Dib on Instagram. I'm sure you'll leave it in the show notes because no one ever remembers to like what the Instagram is. But that's pretty much the only place. If anyone wants to hit me up or ask me any questions about gear and work or anything, that's the best place to find me.
Yeah, we'll have it all there. But Hayden, thanks for joining, Habibi.
Thank you. I feel like we didn't have enough ethnic banter, but I'm glad we didn't get into it at the moment. So.
Oh, shit. All right. Thanks, mate.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for watching Uncommon and this week's episode. If you like it, smash that like button. If you want to keep up to date with what we're doing, please do subscribe. We would love that. We'd love to build this audience that we're growing here of Uncommoners. If you want to keep up to date with audio, you can search for us on all of your good podcast apps. It's Uncommon or Uncommon Show will typically find us. For social, you want to see behind the scenes this amazing studio that I'm sitting in, just search at uncommon_show and everything will be there, including our weekly promos. But look, thanks so much for stopping by. Until next time, thanks for watching.